A senior official has told CNN that Iran will get countries that try to defend Israel, target countries that try to defend Israel. The official said that Tehran reserves the right under international law to respond decisively, and any country that defends Israel against Iran's operations will see its regional bases and positions becoming the new targets. This warning comes after two U.S. officials said that the U.S. military did help down Iranian missiles that were headed for Israel. So this is the latest that has come in, that Iran reserves the right to target any country that tries to defend Israel. A senior Iranian official has told CNN that Iran will target countries that try to defend Israel and has said that Iran reserves the right under the international law to respond decisively, and any country that defends Israel against Iran's operations will see its regional bases and positions becoming the new targets. The warning comes after two U.S. officials said that the U.S. military helped down Iranian missiles that were headed for Israel. And for more on this, we're now being joined by our correspondent Susan Teherani. Susan, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, a senior Iranian official has told CNN that Iran will target countries that try to defend Israel. Seems, well, not really a veiled threat to the United States, but that's what it seems. It seems very pointed at this point. What's your assessment of this, Susan, and what do you think the United States response is going to be?
Yeah, it's very interesting that when I saw that news on CNN just hours ago, I had heard something very similar. The world had heard something very similar from Iran's ambassador to the United Nations during a Security Council emergency meeting held here in New York at the UN headquarters at the request of Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. The Iranian ambassador made clear that any country that supports Israel will be fair game, essentially, and also echoing that the United States is completely complicit in Israel's attack against Iran. That's what Iran believes at this point, despite the fact that Donald Trump has said that there were coordinations, the United States was aware, but that specific attack, at least offensively, kinetically, the United States was not part of. As you rightly mentioned, we learned later on when Iran retaliated, then the United States was assisting Israel in its defense. President Trump also had said earlier when the Israeli strikes started against Iran that the United States was indeed aware that these attacks were going to take place and had resupplied Israel's Iron Dome. So it appears that, with those comments coming from the United States and what we've seen, the United States defend Israel because of those retaliatory attacks from Iran, that Iran is saying that. There were reports that have been debunked by the United States circulating a few hours ago that possibly American interests in the region, notably Iraq, were targeted. The United States says we're monitoring the situation, and that is not true. But it just really shows what a tense situation we're dealing with, and what a fine line President Trump has to walk right now. On the one hand, saying that, of course, the United States will stand by Israel, but not getting the United States directly involved in any kind of war until and unless American interests or American troops, which are stationed in the region, are possibly attacked by Iran or one of its proxies.
Right, Susan, but from what we're seeing, it almost seems to be this vicious circle where Iran is saying that the United States is complicit. The United States is saying that it did know, it did have prior information about the Israeli strikes, but wasn't coordinated, wasn't militarily involved in those. Then we go on to see the comments by the two U.S. officials who did say that the United States did help defend the air defense, help in the air defense as well. And then that may be again used to further target U.S. interests in the region as well. So this is an extremely volatile situation. Do you think there's perhaps a bit of a messaging problem here? Because we are seeing the United States try and defend itself and distance itself from this as much as possible. But there is involvement, and that can't be denied.
U.S. officials say, and President Trump had said, that if Israel is attacked directly, then the United States will stand by Israel. You're right that the messaging is murky, but one has to wonder whether or not this gray area of messaging is on purpose when it comes on the part of the United States, because we also heard President Trump say that despite everything that's been happening, there's literally fire on the ground in the Middle East, that he's open to sitting down and negotiating with the Iranians even as early as Sunday. Now, I know Iranian officials have told some media outlets that they're not going to participate in those talks, but the United States at least believes that it's giving Iran an off-ramp right now for it to come to the negotiating table, and there is some sort of negotiated settlement may be possible. It's also important to note that when President Trump says that there is an off-ramp for Iran to come to the negotiating table, in not so many words, it's telling Israel as well that, maybe back off a little bit on these attacks. Let me see if I can get some kind of negotiations from the Iranians. So far, it appears, at least publicly, Iranians have said that they're not interested in these talks. I did have an opportunity to try to ask Iran's ambassador to the UN whether or not he was open to talks with the United States on Iran's nuclear issue. I asked the question, but it appears the ambassador wasn't taking any questions. He walked away. Some believe that if it was an absolute no, he would have turned around and said no. Some say that he just didn't want to take questions at all at that time. So, just reading through the tea leaves, reading between the lines, but nonetheless, yes, it appears that the messaging is murky. Whether or not it's deliberate or not, well, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, everything is developing so fast.
Absolutely, Susan, and I do hear you when you say that this may be strategic ambiguity which is being maintained at this point. And we did hear from the US President as well that he hopes that...
Said.
Right. And we did hear from Trump as well that he really does hope that Iran will come back to the negotiating table. Though at this point really does seem like wishful thinking. Do you think that is going to happen? Do you think talks can go as per schedule?
It seems so hard that, with everything that's happened and the optics of what's happening right now, and the barbs that are being traded, would it even, how would Iran save face by coming to the negotiating table? I think Iran is thinking about that as well. But on the other hand, one has to wonder if there isn't any kind of negotiated settlement. The United States has been very clear. Israel, of course, has been as well. The United States under the Trump administration has been so clear, saying that there are two options. Iran, first of all, shouldn't have a nuclear weapon under any circumstance. It can either come and negotiate, or it's going to be very ugly.
Right. Right, Susan, it almost seems like all sides are at an impasse at this point, which is something that we have been seeing. Is just this escalation that has caught the world off guard, and things are definitely getting really murky, and the scenes that are coming out of both sides. At this point, of course, it remains to be seen whether the United States can fully resist being more involved in this, and also the extent to which it can get involved and perhaps get the two sides on the negotiating table, and if there can be a negotiated settlement, because we do know from Iran, it has said that uranium enrichment, that's a red line for Iran. It's just something that both sides don't see eye to eye on. So it really remains to be seen what the coming few days will look like. And on that, I want to ask, do you think there is any sort of plan of action when it comes to the United States, especially now that Iran has been saying that the United States is complicit and that its regional bases may be under some sort of threat, or at least perceived threat?
It's clear that the United States doesn't want to get involved in this war because, first of all, the American public does not have any kind of appetite, Democrat or Republican. That's one thing that the two sides agree on. They don't want to get involved in any kind of prolonged war, especially fighting for another country, even if it is Israel, which is its very important partner in the Middle East. The United States has maintained that it will defend Israel, but it said that it's not going to get involved in this conflict directly. Now, again, if in any way, shape, or form, U.S. personnel are attacked, then the United States has no choice to counterattack, because that's, what not just the United States, any country would do that. The hope is that it won't get there, that won't happen. But I think that's sort of what everyone's holding their breath on, is that hopefully, it's not going to become a conflict between the United States and Israel directly, the United States and Iran directly, where Israel might take more advantage of that situation.
All right. Well, Susan, of course, everything seems up in the air at this point. This is a fast evolving situation. Things are changing by the minute, of course. And we will continue to discuss this closely and monitor this closely with you there. Thank you so much for joining us for now. For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.